All right, before we start our first story about Ukraine and Russia, I do want to inform our viewers that there is going to be a meeting between U.S. President Donald Trump and Germany's new Chancellor Friedrich Merz at the White House. This is going to happen in about 2.5 hours from now. It's an important meeting, and we're going to bring you all the latest and updates as it unfolds. But let's get you up to speed about what's happening around the world right now. Ukraine stunned Russia with the most audacious attack in the 3-year-long war. Moscow's nuclear bombers were destroyed in a covert operation personally overseen by Volodymyr Zelensky. Now Putin has spoken to Trump, and the signs are ominous. Ukraine is bracing for a shock and awe attack. Our next story takes a look at how and where Putin would extract his revenge.
The warning lights are flashing red across Europe. Ukraine's daring drone attack on Russian military bases stretching from Siberia in the east to Murmansk in the north, which Kyiv claims destroyed 41 large planes. The latest images show the carnage. The world now braces for Russia's answer. A blow for a blow, as former Russian President Medvedev threatened, and one that could shatter the fragile boundaries of this war. Trump spoke to his Russian counterpart for over an hour. The US president says Putin asserts very strongly that he will have to respond to the attacks on the Russian airfields. What could Russia's retribution look like? The most unthinkable and devastating attack could involve the use of nuclear weapons. Russia has the world's largest nuclear arsenal. It could choose to use tactical nuclear weapons, which are much smaller, designed for use in military operations, particularly on the battlefield, as opposed to strategic weapons which can obliterate entire cities. The Oreshnik missile, a Mach 10 intermediate-range ballistic weapon capable of carrying multiple warheads, looms large. Its previous operational use demonstrated terrifying speed and destructive kinetic force. The Kremlin could escalate its use of advanced drones, which have proven effective in previous engagements, coupled with missile strikes targeting the Romanian-Ukrainian infrastructure and command centers. Russian forces could simultaneously unleash a barrage of glide bomb attacks. Moscow may choose to strike at Kyiv's decision-making centers using advanced missile systems. Russia has the Kinzhal hypersonic missile along with the upgraded Iskander ballistic missiles, which have proven to be unstoppable by Ukraine's missile defense systems. Such actions would mark a significant escalation, directly targeting Ukraine's political and military leadership. The US Embassy in Kyiv has issued a stark alert to Americans, signaling the seriousness of the threat. Putin brands Ukraine's leadership as terrorists, questioning how peace talks can proceed in such an atmosphere. As the world waits, one thing is clear: Russia's retribution will be calculated, brutal, and designed to restore deterrence. The next move could redefine not just this war, but the future of European security. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
For more on this, we're now being joined by James Jackson from Berlin. He's a defense journalist and political analyst. Welcome back to WION. How do you look at President Trump's statement that President Putin has vowed revenge against Ukraine?
I think it's somewhat to be expected that Vladimir Putin would vow revenge and promise to strike back after this completely shocking and revolutionary, actually, strike against some of his most powerful military assets, strategic bombers. The question is how far he will go, and will President Donald Trump do anything to stop him? The tone in which Trump reported his conversation with Putin, which was 75 minutes long, so quite extensive. It didn't sound like Trump had actually told him and warned him not to. It almost sounded like he accepted that Putin would. And this is quite surprising, considering Trump was in part elected on a promise to end the war within, I quote, 2 weeks. Well, it's a number of months on, 6 months on, almost, and Trump hasn't come any closer. In fact, we seem to be at a new stage in the war where things have escalated even further with this surprise drone attack. The question is, how far will Putin go? And of course, people are questioning if this would possibly involve a nuclear strike, which Russia's nuclear doctrine has set signals that it can be achieved when Russia's sovereignty is threatened. I think most analysts would say this is unlikely at this stage. You know, these were military targets destroyed in a rather new manner by the Ukrainians using drones that they had smuggled in. The attack was, of course, planned for a year and a half and overseen personally by Vladimir Zelensky. So there are currently, you have to remember, peace negotiations going on in Istanbul last week. And the Ukrainians, they didn't expect much. I think what they saw was a little bit of humility from the Russian side. But of course, there have been further missile attacks from the Russians against Ukraine. So things do seem to be escalating. But the question is this an escalation is this the storm before the calm, so to speak?
Very interesting. And before I go back to Europe's position about the Ukraine-Russia war, I want to talk to you about perhaps a more nuanced point about these conversations between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. And today we're hearing that he's going to be talking to his Chinese counterpart, Xi Jinping, as well. How big of an issue is the issue of Iran and Iran's nuclear program, and how the United States wants to ultimately deal with Iran should these nuclear negotiations with the Islamic Republic fail? Do you think that Trump is also talking to Putin and Xi to sort of get a strategic understanding if perhaps some kind of attack by Israel or the United States may happen on these installations?
As I understand it, the Trump administration has signaled that it's open to talking and renegotiating a nuclear deal, which was once again a case where they contradicted their former position. Trump, way back in 2016 and before that, campaigned on how terrible Obama's nuclear deal was. Now, Iran is weakened in the region, so maybe Trump feels like he has a stronger negotiating hand, of course, with the collapse of their closest ally, Assad in Syria, and Lebanese Hezbollah, Shia Muslim militias. So Iran is very much weakened in the region. They are still playing a role in the Ukraine war in terms of supplying drones to Russia to be used by Ukraine. But I don't think actually they are the big fish. I don't think Trump is going to be thinking about them. He's got Europe to think about. He's got Europe increasing defense budgets in response to Trump and his vice president, J.D. Vance, signaling a lack of support towards NATO as the Europeans see it. He's got China, which is Russia's greatest ally, which has, banned Russia effectively from using nuclear weapons. So ultimately, I think Iran is a player in this, and particularly in the Middle East, but not as much in the Ukraine war as it was or could have been. I think Iran is being forced into a defensive posture, really.
And finally, how do you expect Europe to react to what Putin has said? At least, of course, we know this through the White House that Putin is going to retaliate. We have Frederick Merz visiting President Trump today at the White House in a few hours from now.
Of course, Russia and Putin have said they're going to retaliate, but they've been uninterruptedly bombing Ukraine for months and years at this point. And of course, what is revenge? What does revenge even mean in this situation? I think Europe is hoping to defend themselves and hoping for a swift end to the conflict. There has been a bit of a change of tone in capitals accepting that there will have to be a negotiation, possibly one in which Kyiv gives up some of the occupied territories, at least temporarily, to Moscow, particularly Crimea, but also Donetsk and Luhansk, Oblast, the regions which are currently occupied by Russia. There's talks about Kherson as well, which is also in that region, is constantly under Russian fire. So I think Putin's threat that Russia will retaliate sounds quite empty, because they've already escalated as far as they can. And, Ukraine is really embarrassed them. So I think this will be something that Merz and Trump discuss.
You're not taking NATO?
NATO is rearming. So that's the big move here. The biggest rearmament of NATO seen since the Cold War. Germany changing its constitutional rules so that they can borrow, which is a very big deal in Germany. Borrow enough specifically for defense, up to $500 billion in defense funding. Poland as well, increasing massively their budgets. I think the question is, are they looking to deter or are they looking to support Ukraine? Because really, there are many people in European capitals, especially in the east of Europe and the north, who are worried that this war isn't going to end in Ukraine and will in fact reach NATO.